So was there an attempt to demonize Hindus, target Hindus and blame Hindutva? Charlotte Littlewood is the Henry Jackson Research Fellow and former counter-terrorism coordinator. She joins us from the United Kingdom. Charlotte, welcome on India Today. On what basis have you concluded that the RSS and Hindutva groups were not to blame for the violence at Leicester?
Thank you very much for having me on this evening. We came to this conclusion by following the direct claims of RSS in particular. So there were direct claims made at certain individuals that they were a part of RSS, BGP, youth, Hindutva, goons, extremists. And so we were able to investigate those direct claims. We were able to speak to those individuals who were labelled as such, look at police incident reports. They faced attack after being labelled as such. One of them was stabbed. We were able to look at the police incident reports, and also following that they were interviewed by a media platform in the UK called Channel 4, and we were able to, from that evidence, show that they actually had very little awareness of India politics at all. They kept calling it the RRS and not the RSS, and in their police incident reports they made it very clear that they had no affiliation to subcontinent politics whatsoever.
Okay.
So,
right. So, and how did you conclude that a fake narrative was set to blame Hindutva for this violence?
I think it's also important to just iterate there that those particular individuals were the ones that organised the Hindu March, and obviously those that organised the Hindu March would be the ones you would expect to have this connection to the subcontinent. If any player in this had a connection, it would be those that organised the march. So it's important to say. Your question there was why? Did you ask me why it was?
That's right. How have you concluded that this was a fake narrative, target Hindus, blame Hindutva?
Well, we looked at police reports, police incident reports, police statements. We interviewed both Muslims and Hindus on the ground in Leicester. We spoke to the temples in Leicester. We spoke to organisations, community organisation groups in Leicester. And where there were claims of RSS and Hindutva extremism, we interrogated those claims. And we came to the final conclusion that a false narrative of Hindutva extremism had been used against Hindu youth who had been causing trouble. The Muslim and the Hindu youth had been causing trouble with each other. In Leicester, this has been dressed up as Hindutva extremism, given this political sheen, and that's what actually brought the vandalism onto the community and brought the unrest onto the community. It was actually the labelling of Hindutva extremism that brought protesters from the rest of the country, places like Birmingham, into Leicester to attack what they thought were Hindutva extremism and RSS terrorists. And that's actually the order of the events. It was this false claim that brought the unrest.
Okay, okay. Is there a link between the violence at Leicester and the subsequent violence in Birmingham?
So the unrest in Birmingham was absolutely linked to the unrest in Leicester, in that it was about this Hindutva extremism in the UK. But there was something particular about Birmingham. Birmingham was supposed to be hosting a speaker who has links to Indian politics. She's from India, and there were concerns about her, and there were concerns about her having been involved in extremism and having held anti-Muslim sentiment. However, the temple in question had these concerns brought to them 2 weeks before the protest, and as soon as they were made aware of the Muslim community's concerns, they cancelled the event. Yet 2 weeks later, 200 balaclavaed mob descend on the temple and try to climb its walls and demonstrate them in profane ways in front of the elderly Hindu community within the temple. But they had cancelled that event. They didn't want any conflict with the Muslim community. It is really peaceful, cohesive community, and it was an absolute disgrace.
Okay. And who were these people? Have you been able to find out those who were the perpetrators of the violence at Leicester, those who organized the gathering against a Hindu temple in Birmingham, and those who blamed Hindus and Hindutva? Is there any link amongst them?
There are a number of different agitators and different layers to this. This was very interesting because unlike the Hindu protests in Leicester, which were localized and about protesting for their right to live peacefully in Leicester, the anti-Hindutva marching was about this Hindutva extremism boogeyman. And it was organised to bring people across the country to Leicester. So there was far more involved in that organisation. Therefore, you were able to see the social media groups that were discussing the organisation, come, let's get into cars together, let's go and get these Hindutva extremists, let's drive them out of Leicester like we drove them out of Kashmir. It was very nasty, it was very targeted, there were incitements to violence, and it seemed to be particularly led by 2, maybe 3 social media groups, okay, and one individual who goes by 3 different names, but one of those names is Dutch Raja and Norman Khan, and he has given praise to Dawood Ibrahim.
Okay,
the person.
But I want to understand from you, Charlotte, is there a free, fair and impartial investigation on by authorities? Are real culprits being identified, questioned, and hopefully legal action taken against them?
On one side, yes. So for those that were involved in the micro-community cohesion breakdown, the clashing between the Muslim and Hindu youths that started in May, and there were victims on both sides, those incidences and the marches, the violence and the protests, there are police investigations, people are being charged. However, we are yet to see, I'm sure we will see, but we are yet to see those that were inciting violence and organising and spreading the misinformation around Hindutva and bringing the danger to the Hindu community. We're yet to see how they are being investigated by the police and whether they will be charged. There's very clear lines crossed of incitement to violence, and there's very clear dangerous links, praising of the D Company, and Dawood Ibrahim, as I've already said. These are very concerning links.
They indeed are, Charlotte, but there were also reports that seem to indicate that Hindus, at least some, had fled their homes in Muslim-dominated localities in Leicester. That atmosphere of fear, is it still there, or have authorities and community elders been able to reassure people, bring the situation back from the brink, and are Hindus returning to their homes?
The last time I spoke to families that were living in alternative accommodation slightly outside of the area in Leicester where the conflict was at its worst, from my understanding, they have not returned to those particular homes in Leicester as yet. There's been police advice for certain individuals to not return to that area. We're talking about a small area in Leicester, so people moved to alternative homes in areas outside of that area, but still in Leicester. Some moved further out. So to my knowledge, those that were in the worst affected areas that were advised not to return have not yet returned. However, I can only hope that now that we're starting to expose that there was not RSS extremism, Hindutva organised extremism, funding from the subcontinent of Hindutva extremists, and these words that were bandied about that the media seem to have very little understanding of and picked up on and ran with, now that that seems to be stopping, now that we're getting a control of the facts, the narrative, we're now being able to show that this wasn't true with clear evidence, we can only hope now that the communities will begin to heal.
So this is alarming. This is actually quite alarming. Hindus were targeted and Hindutva was blamed. Do your investigations show that this was part of an organized campaign by vested interests? Because this looks too pat that some violence takes place post a cricket match or some argument takes place post a cricket match and suddenly things flare up, first in Leicester, then in Birmingham, and Hindus themselves or Hindutva is blamed, including by some very powerful elements in the United Kingdom.
Yes, it actually had nothing to do with the cricket match, and those that were involved in the sport hooliganism around the cricket match are not the same Hindu and Muslim youth that have been involved in clashes in Leicester that the real concern was about and that were painted as Hindutva and RSS. Actually, the chanting at the cricket match, there's a lot of confusion over who was involved there and what that was about, but it doesn't seem connected to the longer story in Leicester.
Fair enough. Charlotte Littlewood, for joining us here on India Today. Many thanks. Continue tracking that story. I would like to come back to you for more. And let's sincerely hope that the police in the Midlands in the United Kingdom carry out a free, fair and impartial investigation and action is taken against those who are responsible. Many thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.